you know, I always try to get a sense of what somebody wants to do now and in the future. And it sounds like you would be open to, you want to have this set up best for homesteading, but to build it and design it so that you have the optionality to make it commercial later if you decided that that was something that you needed to do or wanted to do. You'd be better off putting infrastructure in a place that was accommodating to both scenarios, right? Because you can certainly set up the infrastructure right out of the gate that really accommodates your homestead better, or you can go what accommodates the farm better, or somewhere in between. And placement of buildings and greenhouses is really important that way. Because like if you said you only wanted a homestead, I would say, well then, dude, put that greenhouse as close to your home as humanly possible, and that
Right.
would probably be something like in here. But that, or we could maybe move that. Maybe it could be even right here. And maybe there's a case that that could be the let's see, if that's 50, this would be like, there's 100 and it's by 16, so that greenhouse would kind of look like that, so that probably wouldn't fit in there, but maybe you'd put it somewhere in here. But if you wanted to think going commercial, you might want to separate these a little bit and have the option of adding greenhouses in at a
Mm.
later date. So you might want to say in this zone here, I imagine you're not necessarily going to keep all of these paddocks as they are, because you're going to do your animals in a slightly different way, right? Like these fences
Yeah,
are just kind of garbage, right?
yeah, the posts are all rotted out. The fence that's kind of surrounding the house, they just put that in. That's like a dog run. So I think on the south end of the house, we'll have a small little backyard there with, like a patio and a fire pit, social area for a table or whatever. But yeah, all that fencing is going to come out. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's nice, not in great shape, and I don't super love the design for it. So I think we'll kind of move whatever we got to move to accommodate like the best design for us.
right, right. So I'm thinking if you looked at this garden, like thinking about your zones, like kind of zones of intensity, going like this, that's what we would call a zone one. I hate when it does that. And then kind of going a little bit further out, that would be a zone two. And then going further out, let's call it the edge to the edge, that's your zone three. So in that case, and I'll just delete these because they just look stupid, but that's the basic idea. Um, I would get that greenhouse close-ish to your house. And the reason there is that you want to have stuff in the winter here. And so
Right.
if this is your south here, this is east this way. It's always better to have more eastern exposure with a greenhouse than a western exposure, especially in the colder months and even in the spring, because like having optimal exposure in the afternoon isn't quite as important. There's a couple factors here. Is you probably have a view from these. This is a two-story house.
Yeah, two-story house. Those upstairs south windows have gorgeous views. The main floor is kind of, there's trees and stuff, and it actually slopes like slightly uphill. So the main floor doesn't have a great view, but the second floor does. Yeah.
The second floor does, yeah. So I mean, if I was going to put this first greenhouse in, I would put it somewhere in here.
Yep.
It doesn't matter so much where. It's really up to you in that how far do you want to walk to it in the winter. So when you've got some stuff in there, this is more or less like your winter garden. You've got overwintered crops in there: spinach, kale, carrots, things like that.
Yeah.
How far do you want to walk out to it in the winter? That's really all. That's really all that matters for this placement. And then the other consideration is how much does it block your view. So if it's a 16 footer, it's probably 10 feet in the middle or so. Do you know? Did you see the dimensions of it?
I have it somewhere. We did get the 16-inch lift kit, so and it's
Yeah.
the Gothic one. So the peak is probably fairly tall. The center, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's probably around there. So, I mean, where this goes, like I wouldn't put it down on this, because then you have eastern shade, which really sucks in the
Okay.
spring, because that means that
Yeah.
it'll take a while to warm up. Whereas if you have eastern exposure here, that means in the morning, say like, now we're kind of in it now. So say mid-March until early May, when mornings are still cool, you want to have maximum sun come in. So placing it on this side of your property is going to be better than placing it on this side.
Okay.
And then as far as how far you put it down here, it just really is how far do you want to walk to get to it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So on that western side there, you can see it's a pretty dense forest, and that's a fairly mature. That guy must have planted those out, yeah, probably 20 years ago or so.
Yeah.
So those trees are fairly tall.
Yep.
And will cast like some shade, some western shade eventually.
Yep. And so then the happy medium, the most optimal is to put this in the middle. However, that might block your view.
Right.
If you felt that you wanted to do something with this, I mean, your driveway's here though. So to like, if we weren't considering any, if we had zero restrictions as far as driveways and infrastructure that's already there, a really optimal place would be to just put it here.
Right.
That doesn't make sense because it's in the middle of your driveway. And so, putting this greenhouse perhaps here might be okay. But again, it comes down to your view, because those things are important too, right? Every morning you go and you look out your window in your living room. And if this is obstructing your view, well, it's kind of annoying. That's why I thought, going in this direction might give you a bit more view. You're still going to have a bit of obstruction here.
That's okay. I think that's a spot that makes sense there.
Yeah. I mean, just looking from this view, it might not get in the way that much. And so that would be sort of putting this greenhouse down in this area. It's like your primary greenhouse. It's a 16 by 100. A greenhouse like this has a lot of options to expand. You could easily add a double poly layer, run some power out there, have a blower. You could say, okay, now we want to run this greenhouse a little bit beyond 3 seasons. We might want to have our nursery in here. And if you wanted to commercialize your farm, this would be an optimal greenhouse to start to deck it out. Because going forward, you might say, well, if I'm going to do high tunnels and things like that for more production, maybe you could put those further down. Maybe those could go in this zone here. No, not that zone, because that's more in this zone. Sorry.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.